Good morning, Rabbi Isai. How's everybody doing? All right, Lili Nishmas Imi Rus Bas Mordechai. And sponsored by Chaim Zimmerman for Refuah Shlema for Tzvi Moshe ben Gittel, who says, Chaim says that his father is a big fan of the shir, especially the stories. Okay, Shkoyach. Sponsored again by Avi, a guy, the Refuah Shlema of Edward ben Suzette. You hear this, Mordechai Ashkenazi? Where is he? Yeah, okay. And by our very good friend, sponsored by Donnie Fine, whose father Tzvi is on every night as well, every morning, in the schus of the Refuah Shlema of Yehudis Bat Sarah, who will be going into complicated spinal surgery today at 7 a.m. In other words, it's happening right now. She should have a Refuah Shlema Rabbi Isai, say a capital Tehilim for Yehudis Bat Sarah, and that her surgery should go well. Amen. Quick email from Yaakov Razner. He says, been eight months now and enjoying you twice every day. That's one email. It's a combination of two. Dear Rebelli, your shiurim are continuously awesome every day. Something to look forward to begin my day and to end my day watching again immediately after coming home from my regular Daf Yomi share, 3 shiurim with Rav Nachum Borowski Shlita, which I went back to this week. Still hooked on your great cheer. Aha, he's having a little guilt here. So that's why he wrote it in. Okay, great. But he's still hooked on the great share. Won't miss for anything. You're really special in every way. The chizik you gave me through your magnificent share, you gave me great learning during the day, during these hard times. You're truly missed. Looking forward to me in person. The biggest HaTorah, Yaakov Razner, Yesher Koyach. Probably not related to the famous Rabbi Razner. Otherwise, you'd be in big trouble. I want to tell you, so my good friend, also my cousin-in-law, Elchana Feinstein of Magid Shir, tremendous Bal Kishrin. Back in the day, he was the only guy that made it from Turo to NYU. Yeah, he scored like a perfect score on the LSAT. You know, one of these genius guys. So anyways, it's bothering me the whole day. What, Zoom is not so good, Gary? Ay. Okay. You see him messing around with my computer already. So he's bothering me about this ladder thing that we learned yesterday. It's a ladder that's 14 tfachim, and the wall is 10 tfachim, and you move it 4 tfachim away from the wall. It doesn't really add up. The whole Rashi, how does it work? I said, drainage can cup. Taisus kind of discusses, what do you want from me? But anyways, he called me back later and told me, Gevaldik Pshat, I have to share this with you, from the Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes says that the ladder is 14 tfachim tall, and what Rashi means by saying to move it 4 tfachim, he doesn't mean these 4 boxes on the floor, to move it 4 tfachim away from the wall. What he means rather is getting rid of those 4 tfachim that extend above the wall. Pull the ladder enough on an angle that you don't have 14 tfachim, you don't have the extra 4 tfachim on the top. And while he was telling this to me, he says, listen, a couple people contacted me and they want to know, is it true, this ma'aseh that I told them after shir? So I'll just share it with you right now. I actually got are we okay, Gary? I don't know where he is. Okay. So it's not such a great whatever, but it was a story for after shir, but because of Chanan and they called him up, and so I'm going to share it with you real quickly. As Chatoy ani maskir hayoim, I used to have season tickets to the Bulls. Sat 9 or 6 rows off the court, right behind the bench. Kids are great tickets, Derrick Rose. So every game, the famous Bulls mascot, Benny the Bull, as you come back from halftime, he would spray people with this silly string stuff. So one day I come into the court, and he sprays me with silly string. So I whip out of my pocket 2 bottles, and I sprayed him up like real gesund. He's like, like one of these. What happened was that night, it made it to the news. They said on the news, fan takes revenge of Benny the Bull. Anyway, so they're calling, he recorded it, this guy Simcha Edelman just sent me a voice note that he has it, he's going to look for it, because he also recorded off the news. That was the Maisa. This is the covered, who is it? That Chaim Zimmerman's father. Maybe you'd enjoy it. Refuah Shleimet to Chaim Zimmerman. All right. Zok Tehilagi Gemara. We are holding today's Daf Ein Tes, Ein Ches Amud Beis towards the bottom. Malay offer. So we are talking about, you have two chatzeros and you have a ditch between the chatzeros. And in this picture you see they filled it up with straw. We'll get to that as well. What if they filled it up with dirt? So what happens is the ditch doesn't provide a mechitza between the two chatzeros. It's as if it's one chatzer because the ditch is full. It's full with a material that's going to create a sasum. It's completely full. Now, says the Gemara, Malay offer. So you do one eruv, va'afilu b'stama. Now it seems like you put some dirt in there, and you didn't say anything. You didn't say, I want to be mevatel it, I'm not going to be mevatel it, it's there for good, I might use it as a storage, and tomorrow I'm going to take the dirt out. Va'afilu b'stama. Vasnan, bayi shemilo teven. Oh, sorry. So, Rashi explains, we're talking about tumas oil. So there's a dead person in the room. Now there's a very interesting concept when it comes to tumas hameis, and that is that if there's a tefach between the dead person and the ceiling, so the tumah has where to drezach harum, so to speak. It has where to expand, where to go, and it doesn't leave the house, it doesn't leave the room. But if there's not a tefach between the mace and the ceiling, like let's say in a coffin, but in this case, we're talking about a house, he filled up the entire house with dirt. And now there's less than a tefach between the dirt and the ceiling. So now that's called tuma ritzutza. The tuma has nowhere to go. It can't expand. So what does it do? It breaks out of the house. Because va'oila, it leaves the house all the way to Shemayim. So if you're above the house, you're walking around that, you're going to become tamei. So bayishimilu teven oitzroirois ubitloi batal. If you decide that the straw or the dirt is batal, I don't want it. It's here to stay. Batal, it becomes part of the house, and therefore the tum has nowhere to go. It runs away. Bitloi in, loy bitloi loy. So you see that even tzroirois, stones, dirt, you have to say specifically, I want to be mevatel it. And if you just put it in a ditch without saying anything, perhaps you're not mevatel it. Top of Ayin Tes. Omer Rav Huna. Says Rav Huna, and Tosfos explains, Rav Huna wasn't aware exactly what's going on. He knew that there's a machloikis in Masechtas Oyalos, but he wasn't sure exactly who. So he says, Man Tana Oyalos, Rabbi Yosi. It's Rabbi Yosi. Now he was onto something, just he wasn't exact. In other words, the Gemara is saying, Machlokes Tanaim. You're right. One Tana says you have to be mevatel, the other Tana says you don't have to be mevatel. But the Gemara just wants to make sure we know who we're talking about. You're okay with the idea that there's a Machlokes Tanaim, but the name you got wrong. Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Yosi says the exact opposite. Rabbi Yosi Omer, Teven vein also lefanoisoi. Straw. We know he is not going to move it. It's there. He didn't say so specifically, says Rashi, but we understand that that's what he wants. Hareyu kistam offer. It's like regular dirt ubato. You don't have to know by dirt. Regular dirt. I don't know. Nobody knows. The neighbor doesn't know if you're going to take it out of the ditch. You're not going to. It's batal. So, if I know for a fact that the straw he's not going to take out, then it's like dirt that we don't know. In other words, and it's batal. But if it's dirt that I know for a fact he's just putting it temporarily, but he's going to move it, then it's like regular straw that doesn't become batal. V'loi batal. So that's exact opposite of what he just said. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Yosi, and Oyalos are the Rabbanon. So that's one pshat. We have two more pshatim. Rav Huna B'Rei Rav Yeshua Amar Tuma Shabbos Karamas. He asked me a question from Oyalos, from Tumas Hameis, to our sugya in Shabbos, where a person fills up a ditch with dirt, it's batal. Over there, it's not batal. Yeah, batal. What's the connection between Shabbos and Tumah? Hanachis is Shabbos. What if you have a bag full of cash you're carrying on Shabbos? Obviously, you need to put it down. It's muktzah, but you're going to come retrieve it after Shabbos. Yet, for Shabbos, you're mevatel it. It's muktzah. You don't want to have anything to do with it on Shabbos. So that's a very good bittul. On Sunday, you're going to come and grab it. It was Sunday. 5 minutes before the earliest man, you're already going to be there and grab your cash. Okay, but for Shabbos, it's a bittul because you're not touching it. You're from Jew, you're not going to touch muktzah on Shabbos, even if it's money. So Memela, when it comes to the Shabbos, even dirt is 100% batal. Teven, anything you can't touch on Shabbos is batal. Don't bring me a raya from Moyalos, from Tumah. Halachis is Shabbos, even money, people are mevatel for that day only. So stones, which are muktzah, are batal. But straw, which is not muktzah, usually, unless you have straw for cement, but straw is not muktzah, so it's not batal. Rav Ashi Omar, Bayis Achoretz Karamis, another pshat. Why you ask me a question from a ditch to a house with a dead person in it? Bishlam Achoretz, a ditch that's between two yards. Obviously, you don't want a hole there. It's very dangerous. Your children are going to fall into it. You're talking about ditches that are 10 tefachim, very dangerous. Eventually, you're going to fill it up. So it's there to be filled. Elobayis, which Meshugana fills up a house, fill the ceiling with dirt. It's not a normal thing. Elobayis, is it there to fill up? So that's the difference. So when it comes to a house, I'm not mevatel. Why would I be mevatel dirt? Why would I be mevatel anything in my house? I want to live in the house. It happens to be, I have dirt there for whatever reason, but it's coming out soon. But when it comes to the ditch, you could assume that he wants him to mevatel it. Okay, next sugya. We're talking about the bridge. So you have this ditch. Nasan olav neser sherochav arba. So you have two chatzeros, and you have a ditch running down the middle, and I want to bridge the gap with a bridge. So I take a piece of wood that's 4 tefachim wide. That's if you take the length of the wood and you put it on the narrow part of the ditch. You have the oirech of the ditch, the length of the ditch, and you have the roich of the ditch. So I put the piece of wood where I could climb over the ditch easily. But what if I take the piece of wood and I flip it? I go long side of the wood to the long side of the ditch, and it looks something like this. Rashi explains that it's on 2 pegs, beautifully depicted by the Oiz V'Hadar. You have 2 pegs over here, you have a piece of wood. Now what just happened? This piece of wood has to be 4 tefachim. And I just took 4 tefachim, I put it into the ditch. Now the ditch is missing its 4 tefachim. The ditch just became narrower. So it's no longer a ditch that separates 2 chatzeres. So even if this piece of wood is a sliver of wood, but that sliver of wood makes it 4 tefachim minus a sliver, and it's no longer 4 tefachim. Now it's no longer 4 tefachim. And if you have 2 porches, one opposite the other. So there's machlokes rishonim exactly mentioned yesterday. Are they literally opposite each other on other sides of the street? Or according to Rashi, it's a little bit more boring. They're next to each other like in an apartment building when you have two porches side by side, and now I want to bridge the gap between the 2 porches. So I put a piece of wood. It's only if they're exactly at the same level. But if they're offset a little bit, one is higher than the other, or zu l'malam zu is offset in the height, or zu shloik keneged zu, they're offset, they're not opposite each other. So here's a picture, a few different pictures. Okay, so this is Rashi right over here. I thought you know what? I painted it in here. Hold on. So now you don't need to see this one, but Here, I made it blue, so I thought it was easier to visualize here. This is Rashi. Here's porch 1, porch 2. You go like this. Here's the other Rishonim. It's offset. It would be, the yellow line is straight. I guess the Oiz V'Hadar likes it also a little bit more. The yellow line is straight, it's a little offset. Or according to Rashi, one porch is in, one porch is out. Great. The some that learn, let's see if I have the picture here. I do, but it didn't come out so nice because I blew it up a little bit too much. I don't know if you can see, but this porch is wider than this porch. And the piece of wood goes like that. A little interesting pshat. And here you just have a typical Zula Malamazu. It's a nice ramp. And the question is, are people scared to go on it? And if they're too scared, if it's offset by more than 3 tfachim, people are not going to use it, they might fall, and therefore it's not a proper connection of the two chatzeros, the two gezusterois. If they're offset, not. If they're one above the other, a little higher than the other, how much? 3 tfachim. Then they are crooked porches, but they're still within the realm of being attached to each other. Says the Mishnah. Mishnah time, we have to say Shalom Aleichem to a few people. Joe Shonman. Shalom Aleichem, Reb Joe. How are you? And Meryl Weber, I'm going to get you again. I know you don't like it so much, but Mi'od. Boys, I want to introduce you to Mordechai Ashkenazi. He's a new guy in the Shir. Be'ezer Hashem, from tomorrow, he's changing his name he just has a fake name over there. Reb Doron Kornbluth. Yeah, you're having company in a few hours. They're not even going home. My wife and kids left America already. I'm here by myself. I'm waiting until I could officially go out. I didn't want to be a rush to go on the plane and people complain, so I'm waiting until Wednesday. So I think on the way from the airport, straight, they're going to the Ron's house to pick up the anicle. All right. And now, after we had the experience with this Savannah cat thing, I think she appreciates the dog a lot more. All right. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to get a cup. I apologize. Zog the Mishnah. Madbein shebein shtei chatzeros. So we had this yesterday. We actually discussed this Mishnah. You have a haystack, between 2 chatzeros. Gavay asor tfachim, 10 tfachim high. What is that? That's a mechitza. I don't care what it's made out of. It can be made out of metal. It can be made out of straw. It's a mechitza. Ma'arvim shnayim ve'im ma'arvim echad. So since that divides the 2 chatzeros, so obviously they can't make a combined eruv, the ma'arv individually. Now, what's interesting is that you have a wall that's edible. It's a snack for your animal. So what do? Elu ma'achilin mikan, ve'elu ma'achilin mikan. We're not concerned that the animals are going to eat through and through the wall, because if they do, if they reduce the wall and make a giant gap that's 10 amas in there, now no one can carry. None of them have an eruv. It's a wide open gap, and that's a big problem. What if you reduce the height of the wall? The entire wall from side to side, or 10 amas, whichever is less, I guess. 10 amas is the minimum, but if the entire wall is less than 10 amas, and you did the entire wall, so that's also a problem. Marvin echad ve marvin shnayim. Now it becomes open to the other one. So less than 10 amas, if the animals ate into the wall and it's less than 10 amas, that's considered an opening. It's a Pesach. But if they took down the wall, now it becomes 1. Omer Avuna. So we have to remember this Ravuna, because that's what the Gemara is going to have a problem with. Ravuna says that it's okay if you take your animal, lead him at least, and we're going to see in a second, let your animal eat off the wall. But you don't take the straw and put it into the whatever it is, the pail that you have. We're talking about straw that's not muksa now, straw that's edible for animals, not for the cement. Don't do so. Why? Because you, a human being, you're going to take a lot without realizing you're going to ruin the wall. You're going to destroy the mechitza. And if you destroy the mechitza, now you have two open chatzeros and they don't have an eruv anymore. Their eruv is only good as long as there's a wall. But when there's no wall, they have two open homes, chatzeros to each other, without an eruv. Ask the Gemara, oh, Luke Mishari. Okay, so the guy's now allowed to take the hay and put it in a pail. But you're allowed to take your animal and put him on the hay to eat. You're allowed to take your animal and put him on top of grass that's attached to the ground. Now, you're now allowed to take your animal and put him on top of mukta. So, on top of grass that's in the ground, we don't have a problem because nobody is a rasha that's going to grab and rip grass out of the ground and feed it to his animal. That's the deraisa, kaitzer. But the rabbanon, it's the rabbis. So we're concerned. People might be over in the rabbanon. Now, what's the mukta? So Rashi says, very interesting, that since you placed this food as a mechitza, so you're maktzit midas. You made it mukta. That's the mukta. That was one pshat. And where's the other pshat? He said two pshatim. Or you're taking away from the mechitza. You're by you putting him there, you're reducing the mechitza. Okay. Says the Gemara. So the problem is, how could you take your animal and put him, it's mashma from Ravuna, you can't take the food directly, but you can put your animal on it. So, says the Gemara, you're not grabbing the animal by its neck. The animal starts walking this way, you start playing a game with it until he moves towards the food. You direct it, sort of, but you don't grab it and put him there. And we're not concerned you're going to do something. All right. So Rav Huna is the one that says you can't take straw and put it in your kli. You shouldn't give it to the animal directly. So we have to remember this brisa. So this brisa, which interestingly enough is not really la halacha. There's many things that are not la halacha, but we're going to bring this brisa and we're going to explain every word in the brisa. Vatanya. So you have a house that's between two chatzeros. Here it goes. So we had a similar case earlier, but here's the center house. You have three houses, 1, 2, 3. They're all connected to each other. And they put straw in the center house. Filled it up. So this becomes a mechitza. This teven in the center becomes a mechitza. So now this guy from this chatzar, you see there's another house here, this house, they have to make their own eruv. And the guys on this side of the wall have to make their own eruv. This is a question on Rav Huna. Because the Brisa says this one takes the food with his hands and feeds his animal. Where Rav Huna said a second ago, you can't feed your animal directly. What if the straw goes down in level? Now you don't have a mechitza. Now what happens is these three homes, 1, 2, 3, become one because there's nothing dividing them. So it becomes one large chatzar without a mechitza, without an eruv. So what do you want to do? What could you do to help your friend out, if you want to help him out? He does two things. He locks the door right over here, his door of his house, and he's mevatel, he relinquishes his property to this guy, to his buddy. If I can't use it, it's midas daim. I can't use it, I might as well give it to him. Let him use it. Hu asur, v'chaveri mutar. What's the chiddush? The Gemara is going to explain. So it comes out, he becomes asur because he locked himself out. And when you lock yourself out, what happens? You lock the door, so you are mevatel. You're be'etzem being mevatel. You're saying, I don't need this, I don't want it anymore. I'm mevatel. Rashi comes along and says, if so, in any situation like this, where you lock the door, you're mevatel. You're mevatel. Hold on. Rashi says you always have to do this. We're going to see in a second. What's Rashi says a goiv is a pit. The oiz v'hadar doesn't like it so much. He learns like Tosfos, because who puts straw in a pit? You put straw in some sort of silo that's above the ground. So here, if you have straw smack in the middle of two cities, and this city is 2,000 amos away from the straw, this city is 2,000, so these guys eat from the right side, and these guys eat from the left side. Okay? Same halacha like we just said by Eruv v'chatzeiros, we say by tchumen. But goyv shel teven shebein shnei tchumei Shabbos. But the bottom line is, how do we explain this? It says mefurish that you're allowed to grab the straw and feed your animal on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Amri, Bayis. This is different. By the way, if you want to see what it looks like, you make a wall out of straw. Here, beautiful picture from Kol HaLashon, straw, 10 tefachim tall. This case of straw, what's above the straw? Nothing, the sky. What's above the straw here? A ceiling. Says the Gemara, you can make a distinction. Bayis kivindika tikra, there's a ceiling, ki mifches minkara. A person can gauge how much is missing based on the ceiling. He'll see, I'm going below 10. He has something, it's relative to something. But when it's just there in mid-ear, he doesn't really notice that it's going below 10 tefachim. Ki mifches minkara la milsa. Hachalei minkara la milsa. So meila, that's the nafkemina. All right. Nismait hateven ma'asor tefachim shnei masurim. Oh, by the way, there's a beautiful Rashi here that I saw 3 lines from the bottom. If you look at Rashi, Dibra Maskal Kivin Deika Tikra, he says, skip to the second line. The kol ma'asor lamalo lav tzorich mechitzahi. Unbelievable. He says, according to the Pshat that he said before, one of the Pshatim was that it becomes muktzah. A mechitza, this case, becomes muktzah. Why does it become muktzah? Because I set it down, I put it there, I don't want to deal with it. I put it down as a mechitza, it's muktzah. Says Rashi, that's good up until 10 tefachim. Because a mechitza is 10 tefachim. But anything above 10 tefachim doesn't become muktzah because of a mechitza, because halachically there's no mechitza above 10 tefachim. So it's not even muktzah, says Rashi. It's a tremendous chiddush. You have hay, up until 10 tefachim, that's all muktzah, and from 10 tefachim and above, not muktzah. Says the Gemara, if within this house, so now the Gemara is going to explain this brisa step by step. So we have 3 houses here. Call them a house, call them a storage facility, whatever you want to call it. Some sort of room. Room A, B, C. So the center one is full of teven. If the level of the straw went down, the hay went down below 10 tefachim, shnei masurim. Both are asur. In other words, they can't carry, there's no eruv here, because this becomes one giant chatzar. Says the Gemara, asur shari, it's mashma, 10 tefachim is okay. But at the end of the day, 10 tefachim is not enough, because the ceiling, let's say, is 20 tefachim high. A normal ceiling is not 10 tefachim. You can't walk in a room that has a 10 tefach ceiling, so it's obvious that the ceiling is higher than that. So if it's higher than that, what's going on here? We had a whole shaila. Shma mino, mechitza shem magis l'tikra, shman mechitzos. What? You're going to pass in according to this? Because we had a whole sugi, remember, with Rabbi Yehuda Sabar, who says, in the case of 5 people in one tracklin, and if the walls go up to the ceiling, they don't go up to the ceiling, then the Gemara passing over there like a B'silel, that if the walls don't go up to the ceiling, 1 eruv for everybody. In other words, it's not considered a wall. And now you're telling me that a wall that's 10 tefachim high, even though it doesn't get to the ceiling, is considered a perfect wall. So which one is it? Over there we're passing like B'silel, that if it doesn't go to the wall, if it doesn't go to the ceiling, it's not a wall. And over here you're telling me it is a wall. Says the Gemara, and we passing like Basil, we know Basil is right. We're talking about a house that's actually only 13 tefachim. And you're right, the wall doesn't get to the ceiling, but it's 10 tefachim, and we have lavod, so it's as if it touched the ceiling. Even in that case, Basil would agree that it's a good mechitza. So we are. Today's turning of the daf sponsored in memory of my mother, Shendel Bad Aaron Hirsch and Bracha, by her son, Dr. Alan Listhouse, and sponsored by the Austin and Tobias family. I think that's how you say it. I just spoke actually to Justin today from Justine from Ranana. Gewaldige guy. Listen to this. He's not after the 1 or 2 guys, getting 1 or 2 guys this year. He went after the guy from the 1 minute, what is it called? The 1 minute inspiration thing. Meaningful minute, yeah, Yishkoyach, meaningful minute. And he's supposed to interview, it's a whole podcast that 10,000 people watch, 20,000 people watch. That's what he's going. And the guy said he's masking, he wants to do it, Taka. Okay, we have to find some time. But anyways, thinking big. Thinking large, geschmack. All right, so we're turning the page now. This is our Bubbies. This is Bas Chaim, Nifter at the age of 98. Gimel Mar Cheshvan. So, we're talking about a house that is 10 tefachim. Teven doesn't reach the ceiling, but it's 7. Again, we can invoke lavud. Now the problem is it doesn't flow well with the words. That it became less of 10. It says mefurish. If there was 10 and it became less, but according to you, my masara, what does it mean it became less than 10? It's not even 10. The wall is only 7 tefachim according to you. The ceiling is 10. Says the Gemara, mitayras asara. From the halacha, from the concept of 10. Because if you have a wall at 7 and the ceiling is 3 tefachim, within 3 tefachim of the 7, it's as if you have a wall that's 10 tefachim. So the halacha of 10 tefachim exists here. Now, what happens if it becomes this wall, this room, goes down in level, it becomes less than 10 tefachim? Shneim asurin. Both chatzeros are asur. Says the Gemara, Shma mino, diyorin haboyim b'Shabbos asurin. That what we have this shaila a number of times during the Masechta. What happens if something changes on Shabbos? Somebody shows up on Shabbos, ruins your chatzor. We had the guy dies, right? Different cases. What happens if people die? People are born, whatever, not born, but people showed up. From here, it seems like that if people arrived on Shabbos, they make it usher. Why? Because these 2 rooms over here had nothing to do with anything. As soon as the level dropped, these 2 rooms, the guys from these rooms occupy the center. Until now, the center wasn't occupied, it was considered a mechitza, it was considered a wall. But once the level drops, they both become usher. Why do they become usher? Because each one occupies the middle. It becomes one large chatzar. Oh, so you see that on Shabbos I could occupy something and make something usher. So if guests show up, I'm by myself in my chatzar, guests show up, they'll make it usher for me. So the Gemara, Dilma, who told you when the level dropped? Maybe the level dropped on Friday. And that's why on Shabbos, the whole chatzar is usher.
What would be the chiddush of the Mishnah then?
The what? Stam?
You
would know this all by yourself? That if there's a room in between us that's full of wheat and it goes down in level, that We can't make an Eruv? I wouldn't know that. I think it's a very nice...
You would know if there's no proper wall between us that we're considered one.
Time out. No, have you been learning this stark beforehand? Because this is like the third day in a row, man. Okay, I don't know.
Noam quit the seminary. He sold it. He's running in the cradle now for full time.
Did I tell you guys that they took a 250 daf test last week? It's unbelievable. I don't know. I think it's a big chiddush. You think it's not? Okay, we can talk about it. You're saying that that definitely lessens the chiddush. That's for sure. So Nachamo, it happened Erev Shabbos. So you thought that the whole chiddush is that it happened on Shabbos and that's why it's awesome. I think just the fact that, check this out, it's a great case. You're over here, I'm over here, and we share the center guy, and we filled it with wheat. And because I filled it with wheat, it's considered a mechitza. And now that it went down in level, it's not a mechitza. I don't know.
If it happens on Shabbos, then you have the chiddush of Dior and Abayim b'Shabbos.
But we never spoke about that. Hello, on Amud Aleph, we never mentioned the word of Dior and Abayim b'Shabbos. That's a new concept that we're asking about right now. But on Amud Aleph, you didn't say, hey, it's Pshat. You didn't say, Eli, what's going on here? It's Pshat. You thought it was a nice chiddush on Amud Aleph. Now that I'm bringing up the Dior and Abayim b'Shabbos, and I'm telling you, I'm wiggling my way out of Dior and Abayim b'Shabbos, you tell me what's the chiddush. But we didn't even know about Dior and Abayim b'Shabbos 5 minutes ago. We said this whole case, and nobody had an issue that's a chiddush or not a chiddush. I don't know. Fine. But what is a case? Very interesting. What is a case that something does change on Shabbos? So we kind of had it. Taisus brings a case where the ger who doesn't have Yarshim dies Erev Shabbos. And the Jew grabs his property on Shabbos. Remember the case? So that changes. That could change what happens on Shabbos. Why? Because he had the ability to do it before Shabbos. Stop. Interesting. Okay. Case of the Oisa. So what's the idea in the Brisa? What's the Eitzah? Noel is based on Mevatel Rishus. He does two things. Locks the door, which Rashi explains over there, that's sort of a bittul. He's telling people I'm Mevatel. And he says, Mefurish, I'm Mevatel my Rishus. I don't want it anymore. You could have it. He tells his buddy, the neighbor, next door neighbor, you take my Rishus, and therefore his neighbor can carry. Says the Gemara, Tarti. You need two things. You need a lock and be Mevatel. Says the Gemara, Achikama. Oy Noel as Beisoy, Oy Mevatel as Rishus. One out of the two. You could lock, which is bittul. Maybe Rashi says it over here. And over here Rashi says, B'chol mevatel rishus, the boy linol. Anytime you're mevatel rishus, you have to lock the door. Very interesting Rashi. Taisus Mechulak. Taisus says the whole thing here that it's only in a situation when you're used to do, we'll see that in a second. V'boy seima, lo'olam tarti. No, you need two. You need two things. Even the doshbei asi lital tule. So since you're so used to going in and out of the storage room, so you're going to come to carry, you have to lock the door. So this is a question that people like Noam like to ask, and it's a good question. I thought about it, and that's why I have a little bit of a chiddush maybe. I don't know if it's a chiddush, but I think the way to learn Pshat here is, because then you could just ask, so just lock the door. Right? No, you would ask that question. So just lock the door. So then what do you need to be mevatel? Once you're locking the door, I'm not going to come to step there. I think the answer is, and I might be wrong though, so look it up. Maybe the answer is that you have to be mevatel. Just in addition to that, you have to lock the door. So in other words, locking the door wouldn't be enough. I think that's what the Gemara might be saying. I didn't really see it anywhere, but it could be that's what the Gemara is saying. Otherwise, you have that obvious question, I think. Just lock the door. Why do you need two things? No, you have to do bittul, but you're going to say, okay, but according to Rashi, the locking door is bittul, why do you have to do bittul? Okay, fine. Yeah, and according to Rashi, that says you have to do this every single time, so then a guy that's mevatel, how does he get in and out of his house? So Taisus says a big chiddush here. So he says, you could open the door and leave. When you come back, close the door. You should always have it locked. In other words, it's not locked to the point that you're not allowed to open it. it's locked to the point to remind you that you shouldn't carry. But if you need to get out, you get out. Who also the chaver mutter? Pshita. If I'm mevatel my rishus to you, so I can't carry my chatzar. It doesn't help me. It helps you. So Ruvain gave it all to Shimon. Shimon does all his stuff, whatever he needs to do. He takes out his hay, and then Shimon in return goes back to Ruvain and gives it all back to Ruvain. He takes his rishus and the rishus he received from Ruvain, gives it right back to him. And now Ruvain can do his thing. 25 minutes later, Ruvain goes and gives it back to Shimon. And every 25 minutes they give it back to each other. So the chiddush is you cannot do so. But in fact, the halacha is, if you look over here, there's no indication of halacha. The halacha is the opposite. You could be mevatel because we had the sugi that's chucha v'tlula. It's mamish making a joke out of chachamim, but we don't pass like that. It was a concern, but we don't pass like that. Remember this case. There's a bunch of straw in between two cities. Each city could go grab. Pshita. In other words, what's the nafkemina between a tchum and a chatzar? And eruv chatzeres. I could do with eruv chatzeres. I could eat from my side, you could eat from your side. So eruv tchum should be the same thing. What's the problem? Let's read Rebbe Kiva. The famous Rebbe Kiva, the Amar tchum and the Raisa. He says the whole kinds of the Raisa. Maybe I, from the right side, will come and eat a little bit off your side, and that's Issa Raisa, because Tchum, and that's a little bit more Chamor, a lot more Chamor than the Rabbanan part of Tchum. So we're not, even according to Rebbe Kiva, we're not concerned. Zok Deilegi Mishnah, Keitzad Mishtatvim b'Mavui. Mavui is an alley. I could have 200 people living in the alley. So one way is, I could go to every single person and say, can you please give me a piece of bread? Well, my father's not home, and he come back 25 minutes later. It's a hassle. So there's another way to do it. I buy 1 barrel of wine, and I make sure there's enough wine in that barrel for every single person in the alley, whatever it is, the 2 sudas, whatever you need. And then I say, this should be for the mavi. Now, when it comes to hilchas kinyanim, I can't say, oh, this is yours. This is Reuven's. It doesn't work like that. Reuven has to make a kinyan. I can't just say it. It doesn't become Reuven's. So how did I make my barrel of wine your eruv? So, what I do is, I ask one of my children, who's an adult, to do zchiyah. He'll be a shliach for everybody else. He'll be zoicha in this barrel. They don't even have to know about it. You zoicha in the barrel. And who else? Avdoi v'shivchasei ivrim, Jewish servants, not slaves so much. Vayidei ishtoi, even his own wife, even though what she's kind of, we'll see in the Gemara. In other words, his younger children, who their mitzvah becomes his, they don't have their own yad. Their yad is his yad, so it doesn't even make sense that they should do a kinyan. It's like him doing his own kinyan for them. It's like giving from one hand to the other. And not a non-Jewish slave. Very interesting halacha I just saw today in the Ramah. He brings, because discussing Taisus, a whole discussion if it's the age of the kid or that he's soymech al shulchan aruch. You could have a child who's 7 years old, doesn't live by his parents. You could have a 29-year-old, unfortunately, sitting, not ready to get married, sitting by his parents. So what is it? He's mamish by his parents' table, yom and v'layla. So that's machlokes rishonim to that. But one very interesting thing I saw, that if a couple, a married son who's married, lives by his parents, he's not considered under his father's rishus at all. He's an independent person who got married. He happens to be eating by his father's table. Just an interesting halacha. Says the Gemara, Omar Rav Yehuda, Chavesh shel shitufa mevois tzarech lagbia min hakarka tefach. You have to lift up, like any object that you're kind of, you have to lift up. Taisus points out that this is a special halacha by Eruv that only a tefach, because typically you have to lift up 3 tefachim. Omar Rava, These two things that we're about to say, another one, are the elders of Pumbedisa, which is Rabbi Yehuda and his yeshiva. Chadaha, which we just said you have to lift up a tefach. Idach, hamikadesh, when you make kiddush on Shabbos. Im tam miloy lugmav, how much you have to drink from kiddush? I always thought until this Shabbos, when I was arguing with the big Talmud Chacham here, that it's roiv kois, whatever. That was a shtos. It's not roiv kois, it's roiv revius, which is miloy lugmav. What's miloy lugmav? You're a mouthful. But Taisa says it's only one cheekful. So in our days, it's approximately somewhere in the realm of 2 ounces. If you don't drink 2 ounces, you don't have one cheekful, every person to their own cheek. You're not yotze kiddush if you don't drink that amount. Just taking a sip from the kiddush, you're not yotze. You have to drink at least 1 cheekful worth of the wine. Another halacha. Another halacha that the elders of Pumbedisa said. You make a fire for a woman who gave birth. On Shabbos, you light a fire, b'Shabbos. Why? Because she's a chayla, sheyesh b'sakana. And we're very big into the heat, right? Heating up the water and the whole thing, and the eru. So over here, we're making a fire for a woman who gave birth. Savamina, and some learn from this. In other words, a typical sick person, obviously if a sick person is going to die without you making him a fire, you need to make a fire. But in general, somebody who has cancer or whatever, the fire is not going to help him like the fire helps a woman who gave birth. That's what the Gemara is saying here. You can make a fire for a woman in the winter. It doesn't make any sense to make a fire for a woman. It's 125 degrees outside. Shmuel says that if he let blood and he felt cold, you'd make a fire on Shabbos. And certainly for other chaylim. Even in the middle of the summer, if that's what he needs, that's what he needs. Another one. What's considered a avodah zarah tree, a tree that they worshipped, and it's mamish asa ba'ana? Well, we don't know if they worshipped it. You never saw them bowing to it or anything. So you see a bunch of priests or whoever they are sitting around the tree, making sure nobody touches it. So you know, that's an asherah tree. They don't let anybody touch the fruit. Ushmuel Omar, Daf Amud Aleph on top, Kigoin, the Amri Hanet Tamre L'Shichra de Bein Nazareth. Not true, not that they don't eat the fruit, but they say these fruit are for their Yontif, Bein Nazareth. The Shasule B'Yomei, these fruit, we're going to make beer out of them for the Yontif, and V'Amri L'Savi de Pumbedisa, Hilchasa, Kavos say the Shmuel and the halacha is like Shmuel. Have a wonderful day. Shem Alois Memakim Kosicha Adinoi. Adinoi Shema B'Kli Dinas Nom Shema B'Kli Adinoi. Shema Avoinois Tishmo Yo. Adinoi Mi Amoid. Kimchas Licha Lemanti Vorei. Amen. Nachi Gordon. Yeah, what?
About adopted children.
Shkoyach. I have no idea what you just said, but Shkoyach. It's beautiful. Simon. Was hält sich Simon? I don't. Oh. Shkoyach for the email, Rabbi Yaakov.
I agree with you.
How's the new shir going, Rabbi Yaakov Rosner?
Baruch Hashem.
It's good as always. Like how many people you got there? The COVID, not COVID. What happened over there?
Well, only 5 or 6 of us are back. We used to be about 25 people.
Wow. Where is it? Where does it take place?
In Halichot Yerushalayim,
I don't know. I remember you were telling me all the way in the beginning, 8 months ago. You were telling me about it that they just closed down the shir, and that you like literally a few days later you found us. No, something like that.
That's correct.
Yeah, very nice. All right.
From Katz used to live in Harnof and was also part of our share many years.
Great share,
Who did you say was part of it?
Nachum Katz.
Nachum Katz. There's a big story with Nachum Katz. You know, Nachum Katz was in charge of the minyan in a neighborhood here in Bet Shemesh, and nobody could believe that he left that minyan because he was like the first one. He started the minyan, the first one there every day, and that, but he had to give it up for Daf Yomi. What do you say about Ranana? Jonathan Austin.
Jonathan Austin, American?
Yeah.
I'll send you his number. He's been with us for a long time.
He sponsors the turning of the daf. I actually just saw him on. I saw him on now. I saw him on a few minutes ago. He probably left already.
Eli, Donnie Kramer's on also.
Yeah, Donnie Kramer I haven't seen. Where is he? Where's Donnie Kramer?
He's here. He's back. He's back every day. Just doesn't turn on his thing.
You should tell me. I'll say something to him. Hold on, I gotta turn off.